Yo, what's up everyone? It's me again, back with another Boneshatter video. Okay, so as you guys know, I recently made a Boneshatter League Starter video. I think that build is still good, especially at League Start, but in this video, I wanted to share with you guys a more endgame Theorycraft of Boneshatter that I think if this works as intended, it could be my most insane Boneshatter build yet, allowing you to go up to 25 million damage with a ramping time of only, like 2 seconds or something like that. So I think this build could potentially be insane. And I just wanted to make this quick video before League Start and talk about this build. Okay, so first of all, what is this build and why is it different? So this build fundamentally is Boneshatter of Complex Trauma, Berserker, hit-based, attack speed scaling, Hydrosphere, Warcry scaling. That may sound like a mouthful, but it's actually very simple, so let me explain. So there is an interaction with Hydrosphere where if you have melee splash, you can get double damage as long as you have Battle Mage Cry exerts that are on. It's kind of a complicated interaction, so you can watch this video that I made to get more info about it. But basically, every time you exert an attack with Battle Mage's Cry, you create a new Hydrosphere that you can melee splash off of with your additional strike clone, effectively getting double damage on single target. And this is proven to work, and I've done tests on it. But the downside is that, Battle Mage's Cry only exerts 5 attacks. So normally, that would be basically worthless for Boneshatter. However, I had the idea to combine that with Boneshatter of Complex Trauma, which basically it has a limit of 10 trauma, but it ramps up a lot faster. So most builds that play Complex Trauma, they have low attack speed, and that means that they can stay at low trauma for a long time. And basically, I thought, why not combine this low attack speed Boneshatter version with the Hydrosphere interaction, and then also scale Warcries to get like 12 exerts on Battle Mage's Cry and reduce the cooldown of Battle Mage's Cry to just like, a few seconds. In this case, the cooldown of this is 3 seconds. Then, if we have 4 APS and the thing cools down in 3 seconds, we have 100% uptime on Battle Mage's Cry, meaning that every hit deals double damage. In addition, if we scale Warcries, we can play a Warcry setup with Boneshatter, where it's kind of similar to any slam skill. You have auto exertion with like Infernal Cry, Ancestral Cry, Intimidating Cry, Battle Mage's Cry, and then self-cast Rallying Cry. Pretty standard tech for builds like Earthshatter these days. And then you scale all the Warcry stuff. And then that allows you to run overexertion support, which gives you like infinite more damage. In this build, it's 114% more damage. In addition, you have Warcries like Rallying Cry that give you a lot of damage, 30% more when this is up. And then, of course, Intimidating Cry, which is scaled up to 6 attacks. And this gives you another double damage. And the Intimidating Cry uptime in this build is also pretty good. It's 56% uptime on Intimidating Cry. So really good. And that's the main idea of this build. You're playing a slow attacking Boneshatter variant with Hydrosphere for double damage and all the Warcry stuff, overexertion support, Intimidating Cry, and all that shit. That's the main idea of this build. But that's not all. Another thing this build does is use the revolutionary less duration support, and here's why. So the main problem with Boneshatter of Complex Trauma is that it attacks slow, right? You have a maximum of 10 trauma. So normally people did one of two things. You either did bleed, but then you have like 1 APS and it's just kind of bad unless you have really high-end gear. And then you also need things like Rosada's Coil, which is hard to get in SSF and whatever. Or you would use multi-strike support, which only gains trauma on the first repeat, right? But in my opinion, the multi-strike version of this build is very similar to the normal variant of Boneshatter. It's very similar and doesn't provide that many more benefits other than maybe you take a little bit less trauma damage, but then you're using multi-strike support and, so on and so forth. So with this build, we avoid the low attack speed of trauma builds by running less duration. The less duration support gives us 59% less skill effect duration with 2020. And that basically means that our trauma stack only lasts like, I don't know, it doesn't say here, but our trauma mod duration is x 0.41. So that allows us to run almost double the attack rate that a normal complex trauma build would be able to run. So in this POB, I have 3.74 APS, which is not even that bad. And with constant attacking, our maximum trauma is only 9, which is, below 10. And that means we'll never go above 10 trauma. So we can stay at having a high, damage amount for a long time. That's basically the main idea of this build. Okay, so yeah, that's basically it. It's Boneshatter, complex trauma with less duration support to enable attack speed, and then Warcry scaling with overexertion, intimidating cry, so on and so forth, and then Hydrosphere for the double damage. And all of that combined gives us 25 million damage. I should also note that this is with everything lined up, but even if we do average Warcry mode, it's still almost 20 million damage. And in practice, you're not going to be attacking constantly. You'll be moving around, the bosses will phase, and then your intimidating cry uptime will be even more, allowing your DPS to reach much closer to, 25 million. So that's the main idea of this build. Okay, so with regard to the actual building of this build, a lot of it is very similar to the normal variant, but some things are, of course, different because of the Warcry scaling. So because we use Warcries, we have to go Warbringer, and that means we have to give up an Ascendancy node. And I've chosen to give up Gore Dancer, which seemed to be the worst node. You could also consider giving up Rite of Ruin, but then, minus 25% damage. It's not good. And I also found out that if you use Divine Shield, there is a way to reduce the trauma damage that you take pretty significantly, and that means we don't even need to take Gore Dancer. I'll go into that a little bit later, but first let's talk about the Warcry scaling. So the Warcry scaling is pretty straightforward. Basically, it's Warbringer to exert twice as many attacks, and then Measured Fury to exert 1 additional attack. And then we just take this Warcry wheel here, and then this one up here, which gives us the maximum Warcry CDR, basically, pretty straightforward. And then, of course, you'll just put 20 quality on auto exertion and intimidating cry and whatever other stuff. And that allows us to have really fast Warcry cooldown. So all of these Warcries that are in auto exertion, the cooldown is all 3 seconds, right? So that's pretty good. And you'll basically never run out of Warcries, even if you attack continuously, with the exception of Intimidating Cry. That's why we have a boot mod, boot Eldritch Implicit, to increase the cooldown of Intimidating Cry more, so you can have that double damage up for more time. That's the main idea of the Warcry scaling. And then the Battle Mage Cry Hydrosphere is 100% up. I also forgot to mention that the tech is Battle Mage Cry Hydrosphere Hydrosphere, so that every time you attack, it makes a new one, and then it resets the cooldown, so you can hit it like every time it makes a new one. A lot of the Hydrosphere mechanics I basically explained in this video, so I recommend you check this out because I don't want to repeat myself, but the main idea is Battle Mage Cry Hydrosphere. I think I should also take a few seconds to mention that CWDT Hydrosphere will not work. If I can find it here. I tested this interaction out. I saw some people do this, but it actually does not work. CWDT Hydrosphere does not give you double damage, unlike Battle Mage's Cry, because CWDT puts the ball on you, so your clone cannot target it. But if you put it on the enemy with Battle Mage's Cry, your additional strike clone can target it. So don't use CWDT, use Battle Mage's Cry. And that's basically all there is to know about the Warcry setup. So with this Warcry investment, a couple things had to change in this POB to accommodate for that. So the most important one is that, unfortunately, because auto exertion requires infinite mana reservation, we had to basically drop all the auras in this build. So we had to drop Pride, drop Flesh and Stone, drop Arctic Armor, but it ended up not mattering because whatever damage we gained by doing this archetype, we more than made up for the loss of Pride and Flesh and Stone. And then the lack of Arctic Armor is also not a big deal, or the loss of it rather, because another thing about complex trauma is that you end up taking less trauma damage than normal Boneshatter, and I also found a way to mitigate it anyway using Divine Shield, which I'll talk about later. So losing Arctic Armor, not a big deal. And then whatever reservation we have between Determination, Herald of Purity, and all the auto exertions, we're able to just handle with some pretty cheap SSF tech, such as, a small cluster for Determination efficiency, Anointing Charisma, getting Essence Reservation on the helmet, and then Eldritch Reservation mod on the helmet as well. And with just that, we're able to have like 73 mana free, and that's just good enough. You also could, if you wanted to, get more reservation on a mana mastery, but I didn't even need it in this build. But that's like another thing that you could, of course, do. Okay, and that's the main idea. So we talked about reservation and war cries. And then with war cries, we also are able to use this notable here called Warning Call. And this basically gives us 100% increased armor as long as we're continuously war crying next to a boss. And as you can see, this node is giving 12,000 armor. So that makes the build even tankier than the normal variant. And then other than that, everything else is basically the same as normal Boneshatter. It's axe scaling, rage scaling, physical stuff, max res is normal stuff. And that's about it. Another couple of things to mention about war cries is that your quality of life playing this variant of Boneshatter is actually going to go up a lot. And the reason is that there is a war cry called Ancestral Cry, and Ancestral Cry gives you exerted strikes target 2 additional enemies. Boneshatter is a strike skill, so between this, a glove implicit, and the Tribal Fury Wheel Mastery, you can have your Boneshatter target 4 additional nearby enemies. So the whole screen is going to basically explode in like one attack, which is insane. I also don't know why I have this here. That's a mistake, but you could take this if you wanted to, I guess. Anyway, okay, not a big deal, just a random note that I misclicked. Okay, so yeah, you have 4 additional strikes because of because of Ancestral Cry. And this has 100% uptime because we scale war cries, we have 4 APS, and if you look here, Ancestral Cry, it has 100% uptime. You can also see that here, Ancestral Cry, 100% uptime, number of exerts 18. So insane clear, basically. And I think that's basically all there is to know about war cries. There is also another war cry tech that you can do where you basically take the mastery that gives war cries have a minimum of 10 power, and then you take a rage mastery that is like war cries grant 1 rage, and then basically every 3 seconds with this you can gain 5 war cries x 2 rage is 10. So every 3 seconds you can gain 10 rage with this. I don't think we need it in this build because we already have 9 rage on hit, but that is another thing that you can do if you want to take 2 more masteries to like guarantee that your rage does not fall off in long boss fights. So I don't have that in my PoE because I don't think I need it, but maybe you could use it if you wanted to. And that's basically it on that. Oh, and also there are tattoos that increase Warcry CDR. So if you have like excess strength, you can like spam these tattoos if you want to farm these in SSF to get even more uptime on like Intimidating Cry, for instance. Okay, and then the next thing to talk about is trauma. So in this build, I've decided to drop Gore Dancer and then get Warbringer instead. I didn't really want to drop Rite of Ruin because this node gives you a lot of damage. So yeah. And so with regard to Gore Dancer, I think that Gore Dancer is really good in like normal Boneshatter because of your high attack speed. The way that Instant Leech works is that if you have like a lot of attack speed, every time you attack, you'll gain life on hit. Instant Leech basically is just taking a portion of your leech and then like making it life on hit. But in this build, we have like kind of low attack speed because we're complex trauma. So I don't think Gore Dancer is what we want for trauma sustain. It is a little bit easier for us to sustain trauma on this build because this warning call node gives you like a huge amount of armor, but we still do need a little bit more to sustain trauma. As you can see here, at max trauma, which is 9, we have 500 self-hit damage, and so we need like a way to sustain that. I should also mention that the leech number here is confusing in this build. So in order to see your accurate leech, you need to change exerted/boosted calc mode to average, and that'll give you your correct leech value. It's not going to be correct if you only calculate based on max hit. So for the purposes of leech, let's change this to average, and then we see that, you know, with 1 point, we have like 900 leech, but the problem is that even if we invest fully into leech, it's only going to be like 1.5k leech, which is like not enough to sustain trauma on this build if we want to like stay at 9. So in this build, I've decided to incorporate some divine shield tech. And this is some tech that's been around for a very long time. Everyone likes to do it a little bit differently. But in this build, I basically use one life leech like thing here, just like 1 point to get like 900. And then I also run a divine shield setup so that some of the trauma, if not all, is going to be mitigated with ES. And there's a couple of things you can do here. The first thing we have to understand is why Divine Shield. So Divine Shield allows us to regenerate physical damage prevented recently as energy shield per second. And if we do some quick math, you can see here that this is basically how much ES regen we get per second if we attack continuously at max trauma. This is basically the prevented physical damage 5500 multiplied by the 0.3 of Divine Shield, multiplied by 3.74 APS, multiplied by 4 seconds, which is the duration of Divine Shield. And the 5500 comes from, if you hover over self-hit damage, it's 6,000 base damage at max trauma, but we only take 535 due to armor and PDR. So the prevented is like 5,500. So basically what this means is that if we always attack, we can get 2,000 ES regen per second. In practice, it's not going to be this high because if we attack with low trauma, it's going to be less prevented damage. So maybe you can say in practice, it'll be like 1,000 regen. So the question is then, how do we get 1,000 ES? Because we have like 83 int, right? So it's just not that efficient to like wear an armor piece. And also if you wear like a armor ES piece or like an energy shield armor piece, then your armor is going to go down, and that's really bad. So there's like 3 ways I thought of to enable Divine Shield. The best way, I think, is to use a replica soul tether. And this is going to give you corrupted soul, which gives you like 15% life as extra ES, in addition to splitting your damage 50-50 between life and ES. And then basically the main idea is that between your 900 leech and the regen from Divine Shield, you should be able to sustain your trauma with this. Another option is to use normal soul tether. And I think this is a little bit worse because you get less ES, only 200. But Immortal Ambition gives you a overleech effect. So if you have overleech, maybe you can like invest into one of these leech wheels, and then the overleech can allow you to sustain trauma, which I think would be, you know, a pretty reasonable solution. And then the third thing that you could do is just run a rare belt. I actually think I deleted my rare belt by accident, but hypothetically speaking, you could make a crystal belt with like defense catalyst, max roll, you get like energy shield here, maximum, and then you can go ahead and do like armor and energy shield here. And if you put on this belt, you don't need any int requirement, but you get like 200 ES, which is like the same as like a normal soul tether. So that could be another way to do it, because even having like 200 ES is like 200 less damage taken for every attack, basically, because your recharge is going to be like in the thousands, right? So those are just some ideas. My choice is probably Replica Soul Tether. I don't think this is that rare. You do have to farm Heist, but I don't think it'll be that hard to get. Another possibility is to use a Glorious Vanity with Doriani to get Corrupted Soul, but I just don't think it's very good in this build, mainly because I don't even know where you would put it. Like if you put it here, you lose Deep Breaths. If you put it here, you lose Max Res. If you put it here, you lose all this life. So I just could not find like a good place to put a Timeless Jewel in this build. So I don't know, maybe you could put it here, but then you have to like spend so many points and go up here. I don't really know if that's a good idea. It's probably better to just like use a belt. So that is basically all there is to say about that. Another thing that's kind of annoying about this build is that all these Warcry setups require a lot of sockets. So there is definitely a lot of socket pressure, but you can't really remove anything here. I also don't know if I mentioned this, but the Herald of Purity is there to enable the buff from Rallying Cry. And also that's why Rallying Cry is outside of auto exertion, so it can give you the buff. But yeah, there's like a lot of socket pressure. So, you know, gotta be very careful with what we put here. I'm just barely able to fit in like everything I need in this POB right here. So we had to cut things like Berserk and War Banner. We had to cut like level 20 vulnerability, even though you could run a level 20 vulnerability outside of CWDT here on single target if you wanted to. It's like 7% more damage on single target or whatever. Not a big deal, but like you could do this. It's like plus 19, it's like plus 29, it's kind of whatever. Let's put this here. So yeah, there is a lot more socket pressure, and we also had to like drop Blood Rage, but Blood Rage may push you over the 9 trauma limit, so I don't even know about Blood Rage. So yeah, basically there is socket pressure, but I think it's worth it because of the overall power of this build. All right, let's go back to max hit. And then other than things that I mentioned already, I think everything else is just kind of the same. Yeah. And I'll link the POB in the description so you can like check it out yourself. But yeah, I just wanted to make this quick video to just present this end game alternative for Boneshatter. I think this build could be insane. However, it does require a lot more gear. You definitely need this cluster. You definitely need like a lot of quality on your gems. You know, you will need some way to get ES, ideally one of the Soul Tether belts, and yeah. But I would definitely like to build this next league myself and just see if it works. So yeah, if you're curious about if this build's gonna work, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, subscribe, follow, channel. I can't promote. Anyway, you know what I'm saying. So yeah, just wanted to share this build. I'm curious to hear your thoughts about it. And yeah, this could be the most insane Boneshatter build that I've made yet if it works. And that's about it.